Call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. At the moment, only Commissioner Hickman, I believe, is absent, and one open chair. So citizens communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comment on items relevant to the Planning and Zoning Commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not on the published final agenda will only be heard by the Commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the Commission. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone present wishing to address the Commission? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3, discuss and consider. So, let's see. 3A, discuss and consider action to appoint a chair and vice chair.
I have a nomination.
I'd be glad to hear it.
Okay. I would nominate Jonathan Kaufman to be chair.
I second that.
All right, we have first and second, so that's a nomination. What do we do with that? Okay. I'm also interested in serving as chair, if anybody feels the same.
What do you need me to make the motion?
I believe we do, right?
So you have a motion and a second, right?
We have to
Okay.
And
discussion.
then you need to go through and act on that, take that role.
So we do a yes or no on
Yep.
that.
Right. 'Cause
Okay.
you had a motion and a second.
Okay, so
So there would be discussion now.
yeah,
And
I
then
guess
the
we do discussion, right?
Discussion now and then vote.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am very interested in doing it. I know I've, not quite as much tenure as some other folks on the commission for sure, but definitely, have put in quite a bit of work in terms of doing the research and coming in prepared, and so would love to continue to do that in the capacity of the chair for sure.
Motion closed discussion.
Second?
All right, then discussion's closed on that item. So we'll vote on yes or no, or
Correct. Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So all those in favor of Commissioner Kaufman as chair this year?
Aye.
I support anybody, just so you know.
All right, I believe that's unanimous then.
Motion to nominate Nicholas Hudson for vice chair.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? I'd be happy to do it, so appreciate the nomination.
Motion closed discussion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of myself as vice chair?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous as well.
Congratulations.
Congrats, everybody.
Congrats to you as well.
You have to move.
Yeah, now you have to move.
Yeah.
And take your sign.
Is that,
Just take the whole thing. I think you're down there.
Oh.
You don't move.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
You can go to Google and pull it up from
Oscar's chair. Oh, I used to sit there.
All right, you ready? Keep moving. All right. Our next item on the agenda, item 3B, discussion regarding board, commission, and committee policy and procedure.
So Trista will be coming in. She's running just a little bit behind right at the moment, so maybe we can move into the next item and come back.
All right, sounds good. We'll move on to item number 4, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the commission, will be enacted by one motion. The items include preliminary and final plats, where staff has found compliance with all minimum subdivision requirements. All items approved by consent are approved with any and all staff recommendations. Will not be set for discussion of these items. If any commission desires to Discuss an item on the consent agenda. It'll be moved to the regular agenda for further discussion. Are there any items that any commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda this evening? All right.
Move.
Sounds like there are none, and so I'll accept a motion and a second to approve items 4A and 4B on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Next up, item number 5, discuss and consider. I'm sorry, that was 5? No. 6, public hearing. All right, the commission welcomes comment on the following items. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 5 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. Nathan, I believe you're up first with 6A.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. Item under consideration tonight is for a project known as 1849 Park rezoning. Summary of the request is to rezone the subject parcels from the agricultural zoning district to the parks, facilities, and open space zoning district. By way of background, we have the site highlighted here in yellow. You'll notice it's located north of Cameron Road and east of Weiss and 130. The two parcels were annexed by the city in 2007 and again in 2016. The city acquired the parcels between 2015 and 2017. And this is the site of the 1849 parks. The Parks and Recreation Department has been working in collaboration with the Capital Improvements Program on some improvements to the existing park and an expansion. And so the request today would be to recommend approval for a zoning district in conformance with the intended use, which is a park. The site is currently zoned ag. It's surrounded by existing agricultural uses to the east, west, and south. You may remember a few months ago, the parcel, the property to the west was rezoned, the subject of another rezoning application. It currently is zoned SFMU. You'll see some public facility and some single-family residential, as well as some neighborhood services located along the western edge of the park property. And then to the north is an existing single-family residential neighborhood. Oh, and I should also note here, everything in white is located in the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. So it is not zoned. According to the Aspire Pflugerville 2040 Comprehensive Plan, the future land use for the subject site is parks and open space. Here we have a description of the future land use, and it's intended to preserve open spaces for the protection of the environment and for natural areas. It's also located within the Parks District. This is a neighborhood district that was adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. Here we have a few aspirational actions that were adopted as part of that neighborhood district. It calls to prescriptively plan for access to parks, open space, and trails, and to continue the expansion of the 1849 park program, developing it as a unique recreational destination, not just for Pflugerville, but for the region. The Parks and Open Space Master Plan was updated in September of 2023, and in that update it calls for the expansion of 1849 Park and the completion of site development applications that would be associated with those expansion. Part of this request is in furtherance of the update that was approved by Council. Here we have a definition of the parks, facilities, and open space zoning district that is included in the Unified Development Code. It's established to preserve and enhance public and private open spaces, to develop and implement parks and recreational opportunities throughout the city that is responsible to the variety of recreational needs of all residents of the community. This zoning district is really appropriate for all of our parks and public facilities. So it includes land uses and site development standards that are really specifically designed for parks and public facilities. So staff has reviewed the request based on the Aspire Pflugerville 2040 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Goals. Staff has found that it meets the goals identified in the future land use. It also meets some of the aspirational actions of the neighborhood district. It also meets the goals identified in the Parks and Open Space Master Plan. And for these reasons, staff recommends approval of the rezoning from the Agricultural Zoning District to the Parks, Facilities, and Open Space Zoning District. That concludes staff presentation, and we have the applicant here as well, who's able to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there anyone wishing to speak at the hearing before we close public and move to discussion?
I just have one question. So it's a park right now, right? Like there's development on it?
Yeah, it's the existing 1849 park. It's currently partially built out. There's an expansion that is under review with the existing zoning district of ag. The agricultural zoning district is really pretty strict, and it's intended as a development reserve district. So when properties are annexed into the city, they're automatically designated the agricultural zoning district with the intent to rezone it in the future to a more appropriate zoning district. And so if approved, it would allow the site to continue to develop under the site development standards that are included in the public parks, facilities, and open space zoning district.
Okay, so this is honestly just from my education. So the whole thing was ag or still is ag?
It is ag.
The whole thing is still ag, but within that, they were able to develop the existing park up to a certain point, and this is the remainder of that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Understood. Thank you.
I'm thrilled that the city of Pflugerville is doing so much with the acreage around here. We've got an exemplary park and trail system. And I come from Austin after living there for 28 years, and Austin really blew it in not annexing, not rezoning and specifying so much acreage for parks. So I'm thrilled that y'all are doing this. Yay, parks.
Oh, we need to open. Sure. All right, before we close the public hearing, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Motion passes. Stay up for the next one? All right. Item 6B.
All right, next item under consideration is a project known as the Wilbarger Creek rezoning. Summary of the request is to rezone the subject site from the agricultural zoning district to the parks, facilities, and open space zoning district. Here we have an adjacent uses map. Site is also zoned ag. It's surrounded by agricultural uses. Here we have an aerial with the site identified in yellow. You can see on the eastern right-hand side of the image is Manor ISD facility, and on the western edge of the image you see the a little bit of the airstrip for the airport, but it's predominantly surrounded by agricultural uses. It's located in the far southeastern quadrant of the city. It's along Gregg Lane and Fuchs Grove. The site is currently zoned ag. This site was identified as part of the wastewater master plan. We'll get into that a little bit more throughout the presentation. but it's identified as the site of the future Wilbarger Creek Regional Wastewater Facility. And so, similar to the last case, the reason for the rezoning is to establish a zoning district in conformance with the intended use of the site, which would be a public facility. The Aspire Pflugerville 2040 Comprehensive Plan identifies the future land use of the site as parks and open space, again intended to preserve open spaces for protection, and it's also identified as utilities, and this is to include areas where public utilities and associated structures would be necessary. This is located within the southeastern preserve, as we were talking about. Aspirational actions for this neighborhood district include developing unique standards for public infrastructure, to invest in infrastructure in a manner that supports efficient operations, maintenance, and capital cost timing. The wastewater master plan was also updated recently, and as part of that update, it called for this site to be the location of the Wilbarger Creek Regional Wastewater Facility, selected as a major project to support the growing development needs, and to also take capacity off of other wastewater facilities in the area. The proposed zoning district here, again, is parks, facilities, and open space, as we discussed in the last item. This is really our zoning district that's best suited for public infrastructure, public facilities of all types. The land uses that are allowed are really tailored for government uses, civic uses, uses such as utilities. It also includes site development standards specific for public facilities. So with that, staff recommends approval of the rezoning request. Staff reviewed the request based on the comprehensive plan goals of the future land use map, the aspirational actions of the neighborhood district, and what was identified as needs in the wastewater master plan, and staff recommends approval. That concludes my presentation. I have the applicant here as well, if you have any other questions.
I do have a question. Is this the same? Is this included in the almost $1 billion package that was approved when, like, the wastewater and the water facilities was passed 3 months ago? This is the site for that. Is that correct?
So yes, this is the Wilbarger Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility. This is part of the $900 million water and wastewater CIP. This is the biggest CIP that we have. The whole project's about $240 million for the wastewater plant.
And we've already approved that $240 million for just this particular part of the plant.
We've approved the first GMP. Council approved it at the, don't quote me, it's the past couple meetings. I think it's November meeting for the first GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price, which that was a $35 million package. The remainder balance of plant is planned to be going in front of council in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have to have public discussion and then close it and then we can talk?
Yep.
Yep.
That's my understanding.
Is anyone wishing to speak on this item? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
So I just want to say that I am thrilled that the city of Pflugerville will be able to flush toilets long after I'm gone. And I know that y'all are probably, and the city council's probably getting a lot of grief for the increase in our water and wastewater bills, but I know how necessary this is. And to have staff and council that are willing to be that forward-looking and take the heat from the citizens, I applaud you, and I'm thrilled about this.
Well, and FYI, we did put as much of that onto the developers as we
Yes.
could
Yeah.
right before your tenure. It was a super fun discussion.
Motion to approve is presented. Actually, motion to close discussion. Excuse me.
We don't have to close our discussion. You can just
we?
interrupt us and move
I
to
think we can just
approve.
entertain a motion.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, let's go back up for a discuss and consider item 3B, and we'll welcome Trista.
was using the buttons because I don't think that works.
Good evening, everybody. Please excuse my tardiness. I come from the Equity Commission. I drove as fast as I could, but. Okay. The vast majority of this, if not all of it, is going to be refresher for you all, so bear with me. I talk very quickly. If I talk too quickly, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. Always happy to stop. So we're going to start with a sort of quick general, crash we're going to start with. General overview for the city. We are a home rule city, council manager form of government. Think CEO and board. The city council directs the city manager. They place policies. City manager directs operations and ensures that we move in the direction that city council wants us to go. We have a home rule charter. This is reviewed every 5 years by a charter review commission that is appointed by the city council. They go through the entire charter, decide what they want to change, what they want to bring up to a ballot. That is approved by city council. It then goes to the voters. The voters then decide whether or not something changes. Just for the record, the amendments that the commission presents to council, council cannot say no to. But council can add their own amendments if they so choose. General role of boards and commissions. The city council can establish a board or commission as they see fit to conduct city business, whatever they need. Some of it's conducted through state law. You guys, Board of Adjustment, TERS. Some of it's because the city council believes that there is a need for it, such as the Equity Commission, which is our fairly new commission. The function of that is set out in the creation documents or sometimes within the documents that the board discusses and approves on its own. I know our Parks Commission has a pretty extensive policy that they've come up with together to review the sorts of things that they need to deal with. Code of conduct. One of the things that's passed out in there is the handbook. That includes the full code of conduct resolution that you all received at least once when you were first appointed. This code of conduct was adopted by resolution by the city council, for the city council, and also for the boards and commissions. This is to ensure that we're all following our rules and we're all on the same page on what those rules are, because saying, just be good, that means different things to different people. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. Act in public interest. You're here for the public to serve the city, not to serve yourself or a specific group of people. Comply with the law. I feel like it's a good rule just in general, whether you're serving on the board or not. Please continue to do so. Conduct of members and respect for process, use of electronics. That's all very straightforward. Be respectful. When you're here, pay attention. You guys are doing very important things. The respect for process will be the process that the board has in place with how you interact with staff, how you receive those types of the information, the documents, everything you get. That process is in place for a reason. It helps everybody keep track of everything. Conducted business in the Open Meetings Act, I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a minute. Decisions based on merit. Share relevant information. If you are receiving information from anybody that relates to an item that's on your agenda, please share it, whether that's here in a meeting. You can come up and say, you've received this information, you received it beforehand, you can provide it to staff who could then provide it to the rest of the board as needed. Do not share it with the whole board. That's a violation of Open Meetings Act. We'll get into that later. But make sure to share it. We're all here to serve. We do that best with all the information that we can get. Conduct of public meetings. Again, straightforward. Conflicts of interest. This is where I like to just step back and let you read the screen for 30 seconds. If you believe you have a conflict of interest, ask yourselves these questions. If you say yes to any of them, there is a form to fill out with me. And then when that item comes up, you will have to excuse yourself from all discussion and you cannot take vote on it. This is the second page of conflicts of interest. Again, read it for yourself. Make your own determination. I cannot tell you whether or not you have a conflict of interest. I can only ask you these same questions that are on the screen. Gifts and favors. General rule, don't accept anything over $50. If you are about to accept something and you feel like they might be expecting something back, just say no. If it's a $5 candy bar, doesn't matter. You can say no. It's the intent of it. Be mindful. Respect confidential information, please. As always, you are serving as a government official in this capacity, so you may sometimes receive confidential information. Please keep that confidential. Use of public resources, anything you need for the board, of course, we will happily provide. Please use it as such. Representation of private interest. This kind of goes back to you're serving as a government official, not as an individual when you're sitting in that chair. So you're serving the whole board. You're not serving a specific individual who may come up here to speak or ask for something. When you are representing the board and you are speaking about any sort of topic to talk about what you're working on here, please be mindful that you are speaking for the board as a whole. If you are not, make that very, very clear that you are speaking for yourself. That's why we do votes, and the majority vote is the way that it goes. You're serving as the board on a whole. Policy role of members, follow the rules, is basically what that is. Independence of boards and commissions. This is for the city council. This is stating that city council will not come and pressure any board to make a decision that they want to make, whichever way it may go. Positive environment. Personal political advocacy. This one is, you cannot use your title as a commission member to advocate for anything that's going to be on a City of Pflugerville election ballot, unless it's yourself. If it's yourself, but anything else, you have to do that as a private individual, not as a member of the commission, which can be a fun line to try to walk. The same with social media. If you're posting anything on whatever social media platform you like to use, be mindful if you're posting it as a person serving on the commission or as a person who's just posting something on social media. If it's as a commission member, that leans into government record territory, so be very mindful of that. Social media is not private. News media, if the news wants to come talk to you, we have a very robust communications department. Please direct towards them. If you choose to talk to them, you are speaking to them as an individual, not a representative of the commission, unless that has been established. If it's been established, great. But our communications department are pros at all of that. Open Meetings Act. This training you all have done at least once. I do it probably every year just to remind myself of the multitude of rules that are in there. If you ever want to do it again, feel free. It's always helpful. Basically, everything we do as a governmental body in this institution needs to be open to the public. Any votes or decisions have to be made during a public meeting. What is a governmental body? You're a governmental body. The City Council has determined all of our boards and commissions are considered governmental bodies, so all of them will be following the Open Meetings Act. This is the direct definition from the Open Meetings Act. What is a meeting? It's a quorum where public business is discussed with or without formal action. If I showed up tonight and I was the only one up here speaking and no one said a word, that's still a meeting because there's a quorum of you. Requirements for having a meeting include the notice of meetings, that's the agenda. It includes all of these very specific requirements, subjects to be discussed. Those subjects have to be specific enough so that people know what we're talking about. Some of them have to be robust enough to allow you to have a full discussion without limiting you too much. So it's art. It has to be posted 72 hours in advance. If it's not posted 72 hours in advance, there is no meeting. And we will call you and say, there's no meeting. Trista forgot to post an agenda. If a meeting is held and an agenda is not correctly posted and there's votes taken, those votes can be undone. They're voidable because it wasn't done under the rule of law. So, open session is this. It's the open session. All discussion is happening. Anyone can walk in and sit down and hang out with us. More than welcome to. Minutes are kept. A quorum has to continue to be present. If two of you walk away, we got to stop the meeting because then there's not a quorum. Executive session is anything that cannot be talked about in public, and that is a very specific list of things that our lovely legal office determines for us and approves or disapproves and lets us know when we can and cannot talk about things in private or in public. Any action that is taken is done in open session. So, for example, if there's an agenda that only has an executive session item on there, which I've had before, everyone comes and sits down, it's called to order. They announce that it's an executive session. They go back to executive session, come back and adjourn the meeting. Those two parts have to be done in open session. And then any action has to be done in open session. Anything that is talked about in executive session is confidential. What isn't a meeting? Social functions that are not related to public business. If you are all at a workshop, all at the same training, that's not considered a meeting. But you can't take any formal action because it's not a meeting. That also means be mindful of what you're talking about. If a quorum of you find yourselves in the same place at the same time, please be very aware of that. Generally, all records are government records, which means generally all records are public information. The default is government records are open to the public unless there is an exception. Those exceptions are relatively straightforward confidential information. Open records requests are triggered when someone submits a written request for literally anything. They can ask for whatever they want. As long as it's in writing, they can ask for it. Whether or not we provide it, it depends on, of course, what it is. But someone can ask for every email I've ever sent, and I will say, okay, and then spend a lot of time looking through those. So all information in connection with public city business is considered government record. It doesn't matter whether it's a piece of paper or an email or a document I have saved somewhere or something in the bottom of my file cabinet. It's all government record. Which means that if you are maintaining any government record on a personal device, that's still government record even if it's not on a government device. So for open records requests, we have to respond to that requester within 10 business days. The response can be a number of things, whether it's we don't have records, we need more information, it needs to go to the Attorney General's office, or here are your records, it has to be done in 10 business days. So if we ever get a request for correspondence of the commission, we would be reaching out to you to say, do you have anything? And I would be looking for a prompt response because of that deadline. A couple of things. Anything on your personal device that is not city business, I don't want it. I'm not going to take your phone and look through it. I'm not going to confiscate anything. I'm going to ask you if you have something. You'll send it to me or you'll say no and we'll move on. I'm going to tell you how to completely avoid that here in a second. If you do say no, I don't have any records, I'll provide a form that you can sign that says, I looked and I don't have anything. Anything you receive from city staff is already in our system, so we're not going to be looking for that. We already have it. Anything that you send to city staff, already in our system, we're not going to be looking for it. So, anytime you're going to be emailing somebody anything related to the commission, copy the designated staff person, whoever that is. As long as they have it, we're not going to come looking for you. They've got it. If you are texting city business, I highly recommend transitioning to email and copying city staff. Now, if you're texting, hey, I'm 5 minutes late, I'll be there in 20 minutes, that's fine. But if you're doing some extensive texting about whatever project's going on, transition that over into email. You can email on your phone too. It's not going to actually change anything other than I won't have to come looking for you and you won't have to come go do screenshots on your cell phone and send them to me. So there is a retention for government records. So not everything is held forever in theory. The Texas State Library and Archives Commission determines the retention schedule. And they held the minimum requirement for us to keep it. We, of course, keep things longer. Sometimes things are relevant longer just because they decide we don't have to keep it. Doesn't mean we don't want to keep it. If you ask me how long do I have to keep this email, I'll say, I don't know what's in the email. The email itself is not what's important, it's the content. So consider attachments and message and what's in there. If the email says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? You can delete that right away. If the email is, here's this in-depth discussion about infrastructure, we're looking at keeping it a little bit longer than that. Again, just keep city staff copied and then we'll deal with it. And you never have to worry about it again. This is my contact information if you have any questions. The phone number and that email go to myself and to Ashley, who's my deputy city secretary. She can answer all the same questions that I can. And that way, whoever is in office can help you out. I will, towards the back of the handbook, there are details about what constitutes a quorum, what constitutes making a motion and seconding and amending motions and all of that kind of thing. You guys are lucky that you have a legal representative, and so he can always help guide if you're not sure how to do what you want to do. He can certainly help. I do note that for the time being, you all are even numbered. You need a majority, so a tie vote is a no. So be mindful of that. Also, quorum is majority, so 3 is not a quorum. You gotta have 4, which makes it a little harder. We'll be posting that opening here shortly. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for the refresher and coming
Yeah.
in this evening to
Happy to.
walk us through all of this.
Of course.
I do have a question. I asked Jeremy this last fall sometime. When the presenters finish presenting and then citizen comments happen, I was under the impression that we weren't supposed to interact with the citizens until after comments were closed, but I could have that wrong.
So that's going to be a little more sort of board policy based. So I'll say a couple of things about public comment. So if they're talking about something that's not on the agenda, you can't say anything. You can't interact with them at all. They can stand up here and talk for those 3 minutes about whatever they want and then say thank you and move on. Can't answer questions, can't discuss. If they're here to talk about an item that's on the agenda, to do a public hearing, or they have a comment about it in general, by law, you can talk to them. By practice, I would. So right, my most interactions with city council, and so it ebbs and flows on if it's let's do all the public comments and then talk about it, or public comments and then we'll talk to the individual. I believe that's worth a conversation. Here, it probably depends on the situation as well. If there's a direct question, I would generally recommend answering them if you can, if it's appropriate and if you can. Sure, you can have that conversation.
Yeah, with our 2 chairs ago, we would typically, if we had a question for the individual and it was an item on the agenda commenting, we would ask the individual the question before the next person. And for me personally, it was a lot easier to keep track of that way than to try to remember all 5 people's
People aren't running back and
names
forth
and what they said. And then once we closed public comment, then we really weren't interacting with them, because then it becomes we're discussing and we don't want to have crosstalk after that. We got away from it a bit, but I'd like to personally see a return to brief but meaningful engagement with people who are taking the time out of their busy schedules to come and comment on something that's on our agenda. If nothing else, I at least want to tell them thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say too, a lot of that is going to be at the discretion of the chair.
That's why I was looking at him.
Yeah.
That's a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We're here to represent the residents that come up, and
Right.
and if they've, like you said, if they've taken the time to engage, then we should certainly acknowledge that in some way.
All right. Thank you all. If you ever have any questions, call me. Always happy to talk about whatever. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that's our last piece of business. Yes? All right, then we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:39. Thanks, everybody.